It's another day's journey and I'm glad. I'm glad about it.
Hey.
I'm glad about it. It's another day's journey and I'm glad. Let me tell you now, I'm so glad he blessed me. I'm so glad he blessed me.
What did he do today?
He woke me up this morning and started me on my way. He woke me up this morning and started me on my way. He woke me up this morning and started me on my way. And let me tell you now, I'm so glad he blessed me. I'm so glad God bless me. I know that my neighbors are probably so sick of hearing me sing in the shower, but I don't care. And I know I'm not the best singer in the world, but you know what? It frees up a lot of space in my spirit and my heart, and I'm a creative, and I got a little flow. I got a little, could use some vocal lessons, I know, but it's all good. I'm not here for that. Welcome back to the Rhetorical Sake. It's your boy E.R. Hunter, a.k.a. Earth. And Earth also represents an organization I have founded. I got a certificate from the Library of Congress or something, or a tax ID number for extra resources that help. So that's Earth without the A, extra resources that help. Eventually, we'll file for a nonprofit, but I really want to narrow down what's the purpose and what's the mission, because as we all know, everybody in this world needs help. I need help, and I see so many people that could use it. So that's what I'm here to talk about today, because I realized I'm in a bit of a bulking phase. Anybody that follows me on Instagram at Rhetoric, or aka Read Eric, and that's Eric with a C, and reading a book on IG, or The Real Earth without the A on Twitter, or follow us on Facebook, the Rhetorical Sake Podcast. If you see pictures of me now, you'll see a bigger guy than I have been in the past 5 years, and my weight has fluctuated up and down, and that's because of age and heavy drinking. And so I realize now I'm in a bulking phase, and I was in a bulking phase. And so I want to delve into what exactly I'm talking about today on the show, because I kind of been realizing a lot about myself since my birthday podcast. The show is growing exponentially. And some people might not agree, but every single listen, every single follow, that's a big deal for me, because I didn't really expect much from this. And I'm grateful that people enjoy this story of my journey, because that's all I can base any suggestions or, my perspective. And maybe somebody relates and maybe they don't. And I think that's really cool, is when people don't relate at all and they find this interesting, because I want to know what it's like to be a white guy or something living in the Midwest with blue eyes and blonde hair, or maybe a monk, Tibetan monk, in the Himalayas, way up there, and chalk paint every day, and then this beautiful masterpiece, you just blow it away, and it has some metaphor to do with life, maybe something like that. Who knows? So this episode is definitely more geared towards spirituality. So if you're not into that and you're not trying to hear that today, then okay, here's a spoiler alert. But I think that it relates to business. I think it relates to health and fitness. Obviously, I'm talking about bulking. I'm a 6-foot guy, and I'm actually I haven't been getting on the scale, because I know the numbers are going to get in my head, and I do that to myself. What I really want to see are results. That's what matters to me. So after this first week of working out, I'll probably get on this scale I have. Because just a few months ago, man, I was in ketosis, and I would get on that scale, look at it, not like the numbers, 217, and then I would go on almost a 4-mile run, And then I'd get back on the scale afterwards and see the weight drop down. I was that enthusiastic about it. Kind of sick, it's kind of sick. So this is also about balance. And I'm a young entrepreneur. I know I'm worth investing in, and I'm going to get around explaining that. And if you're like me, a leader, you have a college degree, or maybe you don't, or you're pursuing something that you have never had before, that's why I wanted to release this, because initially, to be honest, I want to talk about alcohol withdrawals, because I just had to go through a gnarly withdrawal phase again. And that's how I do. But I know why I started drinking, and I knew why I started drinking. And I also knew in my spirit that I wasn't going to stay sober for that experience unless something like a white light moment happened that would genuinely keep me sober. And honestly, I think the only thing deep down I would have settled for would be like a relationship with somebody that I can't handle, because right now I'm dating myself. So eventually, actually fairly soon, we're going to start getting interviews here on the show. I'm hoping my best friend, childhood friend, I hope she will come on here, because we haven't talked in a few years. And, oh, wow, it might even have been like 5 or 3 years. I don't know, but that's sad. We just started reconnecting on Facebook, and she's hilarious. And I would not be who I am today without her. I would not have gotten where I am today without her. She reminded me when I needed it to keep it real, because leadership has been a natural calling on my life, and it's not something that you ask for. It's kind of something that's mandated on you, and people expect you to lead them, and that's okay. That's all right. I've learned to accept my cross. But leadership is not fun. Leadership is service. You're constantly giving yourself away for the betterment of others. And when I got to college, my drinking, I stopped doing that. I guess I didn't stop totally, but the momentum at which I had and what put me back in California on my own 2 feet, it wasn't the same. And I made that decision in my spirit. And I actually remember a couple of moments when I did that. And I kind of sold out. So it's really cool to have made it to 30, because I definitely probably shouldn't have. And now I'm focusing more on my spiritual life because of my heavy drinking, and what is it that I'm trying to get from not feeling, because that's what drinking does for me. Of course, some of you all know I suffer from chronic back pain and neck issues, as I was hit by a drunk driver at around 7 o'clock at night last year. So I'm dealing with that, and to balance out, not drinking alcohol versus taking painkillers, and then also doing alternative therapy, physical therapy, yoga, mindful meditations, things like that. I just threw in the towel, and it's unfortunate. But that is the journey that we make, and that's my journey. And I don't really care if you like it or not. I don't, but I know that my higher power already knew what was going to happen, or at least he knew it was a possibility. He, she, it, they knew that, I was going to fall short again, but I had more lessons to learn, and that is what I'm going to take from every failure, every setback. And this time around, the shame and the guilt, I'm not beating myself up so much. Maybe because I didn't cause as much damage as I did on my other runs. But I noticed that, in the beginning of this year when I lost so I went from 247 down to 217. So that's 30 pounds in like 3 months, utilizing intermittent fasting. Submersing my mind, my environment, my aura with podcasts that had like-minded content that was about cellular autophagy, intermittent fasting, diet, and exercise. So people like Ben Greenfield, I listen to his podcasts all the time, but also listening to pastors and churches and sermons. and mostly, Pentecostal churches, non-denominational, because I grew up in a Christian school. So I've studied the Bible as a child growing up my whole life. And then I was invested. I gave my life to Christ when I was 12 years old. And then I got baptized in the Jordan River when I was 20 years old. So I take my spirituality seriously. And so I think that's a big component with ultimately being well balanced in my life, because when that's out of whack, I'm not working out, I'm not eating right, I'm not financially secure. So that's why this is important to me. And so I was in a cutting phase. So I was cutting weight physically cutting weight, intermittent fasting. So I would just eat at night. I oftentimes Monday through Thursday, I tried to avoid carbs, but most of the time I was eating carbs because I was working out. So before I ate in the evening, when I got off my part-time job, I would go on a run. And when I was 247, I could only run like a mile and a half, 2 miles. And that was pretty sad for me because I used to run 7 miles a day in 2016. But it wasn't sad because it was actually victorious, because I got out there and I tried, and I kept trying every day. And I got better and better. And so eventually over 3 months, I was able to run like 4 miles after work without eating all day, fasting, and sometimes supplementing with BCAAs, branched chain amino acids. I don't recommend that. If I do recommend like ketones, but there is some research about BCAAs and being in an anabolic state versus a metabolic state. And I'm not a doctor, but branched chain amino acids provided through supplements rather just than through food and nutrients, natural nutrients, can lead to an imbalance from what I gather. So I've stepped back from that. It's not like a pre-workout. It looks like a pre-workout, but it doesn't have caffeine. It does have taurine. And you could it does say you could use it as a pre-workout. So, and I only utilize that once a week because of the research that's been done. I don't need to be sucking down branched chain amino acids just because I'm not eating. What I need to do is let my body do what it does and ultimately get my body into ketosis and start letting my liver release those ketones. And that's what it starts burning fat. And so when I'm doing cardio and my blood is absorbing oxygen is getting pumped to those muscles that are suffering from hypertrophy, and ultimately the nutrients is going to go there. So I did a very limited caloric intake, and I will admit on the weekends, I let myself have Panda Express. But I got the super greens as my side, but I have that little survey. So you could get a free entree with the bigger plate, which is like 3 entrees. And I'm a binge eater. Like when I go off my diet, I binge eat. Like I'm not going to sit up here and act like I haven't had an eating disorder. Like I have. I have been bulimic. And I think sometimes my fasting can be borderline unhealthy, but at the same time, I think that what I've learned from the people that actually taught me how to lift weights when I was in high school, he's actually a really solid, like state champion wrestler. He said it best, and the way he said it was like, people underestimate what the human body is capable of doing. And so if I'm pursuing this journey of sobriety, starting the clock over. And the only reason that matters, because really all we have is today, is because I know what it's like to have 5 months and have that spiritual door open. So I can only imagine what it would be like to have a year, like the zen, the aura, the presence of God in and through me, all in all, a lot less insecurity and things like that. So that's what I'm excited about, and that's the only reason it matters. But ultimately, like, if somebody's like, oh, how long haven't you been drinking? I'm going to start saying today, because that's all that matters. I'm not going to keep beating myself up about the past. I'm going to start moving on, and I started that today, and that's what inspired me to bring this show about spiritual bulking. Cat's out of the bag. So when I was in a cutting phase, I was very vain. I started to get very vain, and I started to get very prideful. Especially when I got down to 217, because that's when it set in I could do this. And so I'll be honest, I wasn't listening to too many spiritual podcasts. I would get into it and get out of it, but and I wasn't meditating a lot. It was hit or miss. Sometimes I do it like 2 days in a row or go to like a guided meditation group, stuff like that. But it wasn't consistent. So as I was starving the body, barely feeding the soul. And so then I have my mind. And so when my mind was, sitting up there on a Saturday night, wondering why can't I have a drink? I've worked all week. My money's okay. Everything's fine. My bills are paid. I should be able to drink. And I literally paced around my apartment. If you're pacing around your apartment wondering if you should drink, you should not drink. Now, a lot of people won't agree with me, but I do smoke weed because I still get paranoid from weed like I did when I was in high school. And that paranoia keeps me from going out to the liquor store. That's what I got to do right now. To me, that's better than Buspirone, Wellbutrin, things like that. So when I'm in a cutting phase, oftentimes I will try to also cut out the prescription drugs because I do suffer from chronic pain and they are prescribed to me, but I only utilize I will not take anti-inflammatories every day. I will put turmeric on everything in my coffee and let that work as a natural anti-inflammatory. I'm not going to have my stomach lining all chewed up. I'm not going to get hooked on pills. And that's not my drug of choice. Alcohol is. And it's it's biological or maybe it's a spiritual generational curse, but I break that right now in the name of Yeshua, which is the Hebrew word for Jesus. So yeah. Now I'm back sober. It'll be a week by the time this airs. And it might sound a little woo-woo, so bear with me, but I feel like my higher power, through the power of storytelling and podcasts and sharing, utilizing the grid, and feeding my soul, not just with, crime, mystery, because I love Sword and Scale. Don't get me wrong. I'll listen to some Sword and Scale all day, but sometimes you're still empty, and you're like, why am I pursuing, that content? So I'm kind of been making myself indulge in spiritual content, whether it's with Oprah, her podcast, Masterclass, Super Soul Sundays, that's my jump off. Or with Sarah Jakes Roberts at Active One LA. I think that's what the church is called. I just told my little Echo device, Alexa, to play Potter's House, and it ended up leading me to Sarah Jakes Roberts and Torrey Roberts, their podcast. And it's good because I'll listen to TD Jakes on repeat, but the fact that his daughter has been in LA and my dumb behind, my prideful self, ain't even looked or checked, didn't even know, they had a ministry out there, that's awesome. So I've been feeding my soul with that because they're so relatable and they talk about being in the industry and, stuff like having agents and being on television or being an entrepreneur, being a creative, being an artist, and the insecurity that comes with that. And I kind of just relate so much because you are insecure. I'm sharing myself, and I don't think it's because I don't have anyone else in my life. I think it's because that's what my purpose is. And it's to bring my story to others and then also learn their stories. Because the more we invest in each other, the more well off we'll be. I'm not going to get through this alone. Neither are you. Unfortunately, if you thought that, I want to tell you that. And so if anybody's struggling out there with the way the world's going, it's really not worth hurting somebody else. There's so much more to life, and there is happiness and joy and peace and financial security. You just got to hang in there. You just got to hang in there. I guarantee you, if you hang in there, it'll be a brighter day. I don't really care what they say about economics, the recession, things like that. Faith and just, whether you believe in Jesus Christ or some other thing, deity, or you don't believe in anything at all, you just know that positive energy gets positive results. utilize that, walk in it. But in this capitalistic consumer society, it's easy to overindulge and then we get saturated. So that's also, with bulking, spiritual bulking. So there's two different types of bulking in the natural world. There's clean bulking and dirty bulking. So clean bulking would mean that the food being eaten, the caloric intake, is very nutrient rich, very diet stricken. Whereas dirty bulking includes any and every and all foods as a means of not only gaining energy, but feeding the muscles that have been exhausted and are experiencing hypertrophy, and so they need the nutrients. So you can clean bulk, which comes out to a leaner bulk and probably a much longer process. So I want to relate that to spirituality because I realize I'm going through that right now. And it's, am I clean bulking spiritually or am I dirty bulking spiritually? And I realized at the beginning of this year, I was cutting weight physically, but I was dirty bulking in the spiritual. And ultimately, those two, my mind is right there in the middle of it. It's at the apex of this pyramid. This triangle. I'm not trying to get all conspiracy with y'all. I'm not into, well, actually, I am into that, and that's why y'all should check out the book I'm working on now when I release it. So yeah, I was definitely started to utilize any and everything to feed the spiritual hunger, the thirst. And it's so funny because I started to notice repetition in the Bible regarding thirst. Hunger, yeah, it was one thing, and Jesus did the miracle with the loaves of bread and the fish, and he did a miracle again on a boat with just one loaf and his apostles. But thirst comes up quite a bit in the Old Testament and then in the New Testament. Oftentimes, Yeshua, Jesus, is referred to as the new wine. And that really stood out to me when I was detoxing from alcohol. It was actually raining in the desert areas of America. And the Noah's flood, I think it was like Noah Almighty or something, with Steve Carell was on, and I was tripping. I mean, when you withdraw from alcohol, it's literally like spirits are coming out of you, like you don't even know yourself. And I guess that's why they call it wine and spirits, and hallucinations and just seeing things in lights that, in a frame of light that you normally wouldn't. I mean, it's literally like the worst acid mushroom trip you could possibly have, paired with physical incapacity with delirium tremens. So that is when I kind of connected that wine was only mentioned in the Bible when it came down to Noah. And I related to that story in the Bible because Noah was known to be a drunk. And so... and I did some research. The thing about it is wine back then, even fermented, wouldn't have been potent and alcohol enough to get someone drunk. So the fact that he would drink enough to get inebriated, and then they mention people drinking so much that they vomit on tables in the book of Psalms or Proverbs. Alcoholism has been around. Drunkenness has been around for so long. And it's been the bane of humanity. It ruins so many lives, but yet it's so tangible. It's so right there. And it's an easy escape. It's an easy escape to numb the pain. So what I'm learning to do and what I've gotten results doing is numbing the pain by feeling it. And so actually I'm not numbing it, I'm embracing it. And realizing if it's bigger than me, if I can't bottle it up, if I can't measure it with the ruling stick, I can't hold it, it's intangible, then it's something in the supernatural, the spiritual, and that's a moment where I can practice faith and give it to my higher power, let it go, ask for instruction, ask for guidance, maybe bounce it off a few people that I trust. And I really think that God or my higher power speaks to me through others. In isolation, I'm only going to get so far. Meditation I only do probably 15 minutes at length. And then maybe if it's a guided one at somewhere, maybe 30 minutes. And I have no idea it's been 30 minutes type thing. But social networks are totally vital. And I will say that because I got it from TED Radio Hour, I believe. And I believe it because I've witnessed it. And I tend to isolate when I get prideful and lazy and gluttonous. So maybe you can relate. In any case, now what I'm trying to do is cut my weight physically because I was bulking. I was dirty bulking in my drinking. And I guess developing and drafting the notes for this episode, I realized that. I learned that about myself. I've been dirty bulking. The fast food, the excessive drinking, the shopping, the sex, meaningless sex, stuff like that. The hedonistic behavior was a spiritual dirty bulk. And I'm so grateful that my faith, going in and out, drinking over and over, getting some sober time or whatever, I learned how compassionate my higher power can be, how God can be. So if you're not feeling love from somebody, you can feel it from this invisible force, and it's pretty incredible. A lot of people, or I don't know, I've heard one guy talk about like he doesn't, whatever. Actually, I shouldn't even be talking about that. I forgive myself, and I forgive my inner self. I forgive my inner child, and I forgive my inner adult. I forgive my inner teen, and we let it go and we move on. That's working for me. That's getting me up and at 'em. That's getting me to take care of my dog efficiently and show him the love that he needs and deserves. That's getting me to invest in my own company and my own business and this podcast. That's opened my eyes, cutting weight physically, bulking spiritually. I'm trying to accrue muscle spiritually. And I really think there's a duality to the human body and our spiritual bodies. And so that's where the mind gets caught up in the mix, which I've just previously mentioned. But now that I'm cutting weight physically, I find myself just listening to sermons and spiritualist podcasts. Even though I'm going on a run or I'm lifting weights, you would think like hip hop music, but I can only listen to that stuff for so long until I feel so empty. And it's so easy to start feeling empty when you have Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And, Jake said it best. The have-nots are watching the haves on television, all over media. And it's addictive. And it's escapism in a way, and we all think that we're sharing in it in a way. So I think maybe we don't all. I'm just talking about myself and what I've fallen victim to, is the delusion. And so I'm grateful that now that I think my spiritual eyes, bulking those muscles, my vision, there's a new perspective that you get with that. You start seeing your spirituality in the mirror. Like you look at yourself pumping weights in the gym, what's your spirit look like? And so developing that eyesight, that's not really something we could do here in the natural, but it's funny how much clarity comes with wisdom that it accrues over time. I truly believe that. And so I think that's why I'm able to invest in myself now and have that confidence, because the confidence, it comes through faith. It's really, I'm taking a risk, but every time I've taken a risk towards my passion, towards what I don't have to think too much about doing this. It just kind of falls out of me. That being my purpose, people saying, "Oh, you got a nice radio voice," as I grow up and things like that. You start to sometimes take it for granted. And a lot of times dirty bulking, that's what I'm doing. I'm taking for granted, the lean spiritual muscle that I do have. And that spiritual muscle, in my opinion, to frame this metaphor, is experience. Experience is what we're doing at the gym. We are physically trying to give our muscles an experience, to exhaust themselves, to live, to pump. And so I think spiritually, a strong spiritual body is going to be one that has lean, pumped, oxygenated experiences. But if my experiences are dull and dark and riddled with drugs and bad things, shame, then my spiritual body, it might be looking a little decrepit and malnourished. And so I would just invite you to ask yourself, what does my spiritual body look like? Because it's nobody else's responsibility to pack muscle on me, to lose weight, to cut the fat. That's on me. This is my turn. This is my ride. This is my meat sack. And I need to trim the fat. I need to get the muscle nice and lean. I need to sculpt. And that's both in the physical and in the spiritual. So for me, spiritually, reading, I ordered books for the LSAT to study. I can't afford no review $1,000 Kaplan class now, right now at this moment. And I can, but I am really sticking to saving money, because I will tell y'all this little inside secret. I was riding in a Bentley with a millionaire, and the one piece of advice he gave me about finances was save your money. So in the words of Lil Dicky, y'all need to save that money. But I'm investing in myself, and I don't really have to get a high score on the LSAT. So I ordered the books. I can't see it. I don't know what my score is going to be. I can't even imagine really taking the test, but I know I put that foot forward. I invested. I took that money, what I would spend on a meal or gas, and I invested in literature to study and prepare. Like I said, with the podcast, spiritual podcast, Toni Morrison just passed, going back and listening to interviews with her and how she describes her writing as an author, priceless. As a Black person, an African American, invaluable. As an author, she's infallible. And that's it. Bottom line. We lost a great one. Aretha, Toni Morrison, it's been rough. Glenn Campbell, may all y'all rest in peace and eternal bliss, So absorbing that, going back to the elders, getting some wisdom, sitting down and just listening. And also getting invested in my tribes again, my boys, my crew, the guys you get coffee with, you go grab pizza, you text, from sun up to sundown. It might not be the same one. It might be different ones. But, being social, that feeds my mind, it feeds my body, and it feeds my spirit. I'm getting oxytocin released and dopamine from human contact, those hugs and handshakes, that presence, that energy. My mind, I'm getting out of myself because now I'm engaging with others and I can't really think about myself. And I think socializing is amazing because we learn so much about ourselves. You leave a conversation at a party or something, you're like, I can't really believe I said that, or I didn't really think about that too much before I said it. Things like that. I know I learn a lot about myself from social situations. And as isolated and introverted as I feel, I'm actually an extrovert. And I have to learn to accept that. And a really big challenge has been accepting compliments. Those nurture the soul. That's caloric intake. That builds lean muscle. That's what I need to nourish, and a clean bulk for my soul. That's what I'm trying to get to. So even this podcast is so cathartic for me, and I hope it's cathartic and healing and helpful, or just entertaining for whoever's listening. I really appreciate it, and I hope that makes sense. But I also just encourage folks to get invested with whatever tribe. Maybe it's a meetup type thing or kickball. Just make that little extra 2 hours after work where you would usually kick off your shoes, or if you have a dog, go to the dog park and actually talk to people there, the ones that you feel safe talking to, or whatever. Call people on the phone, and then I submerge myself, my atmosphere, in and out of my body, my spiritual atmosphere, my spiritual body. is in a clean bulking phase. And I'm not going to be perfect. And I am going to have my cheat days and my slips. But I also have faith enough that I can do it, because now cutting weight physically, it's more than that. And I'm not just looking at the destination, it's the journey. And I'll be honest, there's someone on Instagram that I don't know. They just kind of, we cross paths on Instagram. I don't know where he lives or anything like that. He doesn't know where I live, but I appreciate his physique. And so I reached out to him, and I don't know. He liked a picture of mine. I thanked him for the motivation, because he didn't have to. He's not like, he's very popular on Instagram, but he's not like a influencer type thing. I don't know. Maybe he is, but now we DM each other, and he wants to. He recommends I write down my goals, and when I get progress, he wants to see it. Things like that. I don't know this guy from $2 Chuck, but all I do know is someone that's got biceps like that, and I want to be like that, and they're genuinely concerned about my well-being and my fitness for free. Yeah, that's motivation, and if it, to me, it's that human connection, it's the support, it's getting invested in a tribe. And we're doing that now digitally. We're doing it in person. I really encourage us to do it in person. And it's scary and it sucks sometimes. But I know I leave dinners I didn't want to go to, or meetings I didn't want to go to, and I just spiritually, I feel fed. Even if I'm physically hungry, my soul feels full, and my mind at that point is not racing, trying to find how to feed that, because either my mind is trying to feed the body or it's trying to feed the spirit, and those worlds are colliding. And that can be a tricky situation. So, like I said, I'm investing in myself financially, because I think that for me is part of the clean bulking, rather than spending my money on bad things, bad caloric, spiritual calorie intake. I'm spending it, investing it on seeds that will grow. I'm buying seeds. And I think that I am fertile ground, because I believe and am willing to take the risk. And you guys are showing me that. You're absolutely showing me that by the numbers that are rising on the podcast, and I'm super stoked. So when I say investing, is that I've taken the time to reach out to businesses for sponsorship. And if you have a business that's looking for some advertising, feel free to shoot me an email, erthnpo, as in nonprofit organization, at outlook.com, or you could stop by www.erhunter.squarespace.com. And some people might be like, oh, you should take the Squarespace out of your URL. One, I'm a little cheap right now. I'm being thrifty. Two, Squarespace is hooking me up. So it's kind of like a shout out. And I think that good energy is going to come back to me. I think it's going to get to a point where y'all are going to remember the days where it was erhunter.squarespace.com. But for the time being, they've given me a platform. I really like the product. I'm okay with leaving their name in the URL. And so I'm just keeping it real, because I'm not that well off to be paying for a URL yearly or month to month, whatever, GoDaddy. I don't know. I'm not endorsing them. I have no idea exactly what they do. I'm sure they help with URLs or something like that. So, yeah. And I believe, I prayed over the letters, I played over the packets, the marketing plans. And it's weird. I never thought I'd see the Rhetorical sake on paper, but this is a great venue. I mean, we're talking about life, and to segue into what's coming up, at the end of this month, Tony Merkel from the Confessionals podcast, he has agreed to interview on my show. So that's pretty darn cool, because the Confessionals podcast is blowing up. And Tony let me know, and he shared it on his episode. I don't know if he let me know directly, maybe in an email or something. But they had record-breaking downloads when my episode aired in July. 750,000. So thank you guys so much for listening to my spooky stories. And since you love them so much, as we lead up to Halloween, I'm going to start making all my episodes about my paranormal experiences. So I ran through them on Tony's episode. You could check it out on the podcast or the Confessionals podcast, his website, theconfessionalspodcast.com. The show's available on iTunes. The Rhetorical Sake is available on iTunes, SoundCloud. And subscribe, like my show, like my episode. Stop by my website, erhunter.squarespace.com. Stop by my Instagram, Read Eric, like reading a book, Read Eric, ERIC. Twitter, God Sent Dog. And yeah, that's my seminal work. That's our baby right there. Iris sitting up here looking at me like, bruh, it's time to eat. What are you doing? So I got to feed my pup. But the book's about him, and there might be a sequel in the works, but Tony Merkel is going to be on the Rhetorical Sake from the Confessionals podcast, and I'm going to interview him. So if you're a fan, stay tuned, but also get prepared because a series of episodes are going to be coming up with the paranormal stuff, the ghost stories, the UFO experiences, and I know you guys love that stuff. I know you love it. So this is a great time for sponsors to join the Rhetorical Sake. I'm not going to sell out and have 5-minute ads or something like that unless, you guys are sending me like CBD and I could talk about how good it's making my back and neck feel because I'm in constant pain. In any case, gosh, this is so great. I'm so excited and thank you all so much. So please leave a review, star it, do what you got to do, support the cause. I'm not asking for money directly from my listeners yet because I do want to keep this grassroots and I want to outsource to the local businesses and organizations that I utilize and give them a chance to market. But we are growing and this is awesome. And let me know if there's something you want me to delve more into. I can do some research and really come back and answer some of your questions. So please feel free to contact me and enjoy my silly music. To close out the episode, I might include a song I sang to my dog, and it's kind of based off The Little Mermaid. Oh, God, what am I doing? Okay. Well, all right. We're in a cutting phase. Geez, I had quinoa today, but those are the only carbs. And my buddy showed me how to meal prep without having to like put it all in containers, just like kind of scoop 4 ounces each. So I'm going to have some fish and broccoli and grilled, sauteed. And Irie's going to have some Trader Joe's dog food and a little bit of quinoa and probably some of his joint glucosamine. Oh, and I need to take my vitamins. So, anywho, you guys hang in there. Have a great time. I really appreciate you listening, and thanks.
Irie, did you know that you are famous? Irie, did you know that you are loved? Irie, you're a godsend in my life. I gotta say I'm surprised. I never thought that you changed my mind. I wanna give you the whole wide world, show you a life with bones and dancing. I wanna show you a world where there is fun, where there is sun, and you can feel at home in my arms. Irie, I want you to be, you gotta be the happiest dog in the world. Sometimes wagging your tail, you don't get too far. But you seem to have it on lockdown, and you're dancing. You always smile when I need a friend. How did I land such an awesome deal? A dog that loves me and know how to feel. He's brindle and he walks like a chimpanzee. I'm so grateful he walked in my life. I actually saw him running a few years prior. But who'd have known that that dog was mine to be? So I gotta say, I'm truly blessed, 'cause I get to hang out with man's best friend. And I know this sounds funny, but it's real, 'cause he's right next to me. So where are you now? Now that I'm found, I got my feet planted on the ground, and Irie's right here, sniffing around to mark his territory.